The year was 1939. The world stood on the edge of chaos. In the streets of Warsaw, Paris, London, Berlin, people carried on with their lives, unaware that history was holding its breath. And then, with a single invasion, the silence shattered. Germany's tanks rolled into Poland. The sky filled with the sound of warplanes, and the world was plunged into darkness once again. But even in that darkness, there were those who refused to bow. Men and women, soldiers, scientists, spies, and ordinary people, who decided that humanity was worth fighting for. Among them was a man who would become the very symbol of resistance, Winston Churchill. When Europe trembled under Hitler's power, when France had fallen and Britain stood alone, it was Churchill's voice that held the line. "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds," he declared, his words turning fear into fire. He was no soldier, he was a leader armed only with language and will. In the ruins of London, as bombs rained from the sky, his voice echoed through the radio, "Never give in." And the people didn't. Because of him, Britain stood. And because Britain stood, the world still had hope. Far to the east, a man named Joseph Stalin ruled the Soviet Union with an iron fist. He was not a hero in the traditional sense, his hands were stained with the blood of his own people. Yet, when Hitler's armies invaded Russia, the unthinkable happened. Stalin's soldiers fought like demons. In the ashes of Stalingrad, where the Volga ran red, Soviet soldiers held their ground against impossible odds. One of them was Vasily Zaitsev, a humble shepherd-turned-sniper. With his rifle and unbreakable patience, he hunted German officers one by one, turning rubble into battlegrounds. To his comrades, he was not just a soldier, he was hope itself. And when the Soviets finally encircled the German Sixth Army, the tide of the war turned. Stalingrad became the graveyard of Hitler's dream of conquest. In another corner of Europe, a woman risked everything not with weapons, but with courage, Irena Sendler, a Polish social worker. When the Nazis sealed off the Warsaw Ghetto, trapping hundreds of thousands of Jews inside, Irena made a choice. She smuggled children out, in toolboxes, in coffins, even under the floorboards of ambulances. Each life she saved was a spark against the darkness. She wrote their names on scraps of paper, buried them in jars beneath a tree, praying that one day, their families would be reunited. She was caught, tortured, and sentenced to death, but she never revealed a single name. Her jar survived. So did hundreds of those children. Meanwhile, in France, a man named Charles de Gaulle refused to surrender. When Paris fell, he fled to London and broadcast a message on the radio: "France has lost a battle, but France has not lost the war." Those words became the heartbeat of the French resistance. Men and women, teachers, farmers, and students, began sabotaging trains, cutting communication lines, smuggling weapons. They became ghosts in the night, whispering freedom through the occupied cities. Among them was Lucy Aubrac, a teacher who rescued her husband from a Gestapo prison by tricking the Nazis themselves. To her, courage wasn't about strength, it was about defiance, even when surrounded by fear. Across the sea, another man faced a different war. Franklin D. Roosevelt, President of the United States, watched the world burn from across the Atlantic. His country was divided, some wanted peace, others demanded action. But on December 7, 1941, everything changed. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. In one night, America's isolation ended, and its heart ignited with resolve. Roosevelt went before Congress and spoke 12 words that echoed through history, a date which will live in infamy. From that moment, the world had a new force, the arsenal of democracy. Soon, American soldiers landed on foreign shores. Among them was Audie Murphy, a boy who lied about his age to enlist. He would go on to become one of the most decorated soldiers in American history, earning the Medal of Honor after single-handedly holding off a German company. He was small, soft-spoken, barely 20 years old, but his bravery was bigger than fear. In the Pacific, a different kind of hero fought a war among islands and seas. Admiral Chester Nimitz, calm and calculating, led the U.S. Navy through desperate battles: Midway, Coral Sea, Iwo Jima. And in the jungles, young Marines fought inch by inch for every island, learning that courage was not the absence of fear, but the strength to move forward despite it. Among the scientists who worked in secret was a man who would change the world forever: Alan Turing, the British mathematician who cracked the Nazi Enigma code. Hidden in a small room at Bletchley Park, he and his team built the first computer, not to create, but to save. His machine decrypted German messages faster than any human could. His work shortened the war, saving millions of lives. Yet after victory, his own country punished him for who he was. He died alone, his genius uncelebrated, until the world finally recognized him as one of its greatest minds. His code-breaking didn't just win battles, it gave birth to the computer age. But not all heroes wore uniforms or worked in labs. Some fought with pens, prayers, or simple acts of kindness. In a small room in Amsterdam, a teenage girl named Anne Frank wrote about hope. "In spite of everything," she wrote, "I still believe that people are really good at heart." Her diary survived the war, even though she didn't. And in her words, humanity found something it had nearly lost: innocence. On the other side of the world, another young woman, Sophie Scholl, stood in a university courtyard in Munich, dropping leaflets from a balcony. She and her brother had formed the White Rose, a student group that dared to speak against Hitler. "We will not be silent," she wrote. "We are your bad conscience." The Gestapo caught her, and 3 days later, she was executed by guillotine. She was only 21. Her last words were, "Such a fine, sunny day, and I have to go, but what does my death matter, if through us, thousands are awakened and stirred to action?" Her courage became eternal. Meanwhile, in the burning deserts of North Africa, a British commander named Bernard Montgomery faced off against the legendary German general Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox. Their battles were brutal chess games fought in sand and fire. When Montgomery finally defeated Rommel at El Alamein, Churchill declared, "Before Alamein, we never had a victory. After Alamein, we never had a defeat." It was a turning point, proof that the tide was shifting. And then came D-Day, June 6, 1944. The greatest invasion in history. Allied soldiers from America, Britain, Canada, and beyond stormed the beaches of Normandy. Young men leapt from boats into waves of bullets, crawling through sand and blood. Among them was Private John Steele, whose parachute caught on a church steeple in St. Mary-Église. Hanging there for hours, he watched the chaos below, pretending to be dead until the battle ended. He survived, one of countless ordinary men who became extraordinary through sheer will to live. As the Allies advanced, the Nazi Empire began to crumble. But behind the front lines, another kind of hero worked in silence: Oskar Schindler, a German industrialist and member of the Nazi Party. At first, he joined for profit, exploiting Jewish labor. But as he watched what the Nazis were doing, something in him changed. He began secretly saving his workers, spending his fortune to bribe officers and keep them alive. By the war's end, he had saved more than 1,200 lives. "Whoever saves one life," says the Talmud, "saves the world entire." Schindler saved worlds. In the east, Soviet troops pushed toward Berlin. Among them marched soldiers who had lost everything: homes, families, hope. Yet they kept moving. In April 1945, they raised the red flag over the Reichstag. Hitler was dead. The war in Europe was over. The guns finally fell silent. But victory came at an unimaginable cost: more than 70 million lives lost. In the Pacific, the war raged on. The world watched as cities burned, as islands turned into graves. Then, on August 6, 1945, the unthinkable happened: the atomic bomb fell on Hiroshima. 3 days later, Nagasaki. In that blinding flash of light, humanity faced its own reflection: the power to destroy itself. And when Japan finally surrendered, the world exhaled, exhausted, broken, forever changed. When the smoke cleared, the heroes returned home, some to medals, others to silence. Many never returned at all. But their legacy endured. From Churchill's words to Anne Frank's diary, from Turing's machines to Irena's jars of names, they proved that even in humanity's darkest hour, light never truly goes out. World War II was not just a war of nations. It was a war of souls, a test of what it means to be human. The heroes of that war came from every walk of life, every corner of the world. Some fought with guns, others with ideas, compassion, or simple defiance. Their courage rewrote history. Their sacrifice built the peace we now take for granted. So when you see an old photograph of soldiers marching, or a faded diary, or a medal gathering dust, remember this: every name, every face, every story was part of a battle for the heart of the world. And it is up to us, the living, to carry their memory forward, to ensure that their bravery was not in vain. Because history is not made by the powerful, it is made by those who choose to stand when standing means falling. And that is why, even today, the heroes of World War II are not gone. They live on, in every act of courage, every voice that dares to speak the truth, and every heart that still believes in freedom.